Hi everyone, and welcome to Pit Stop number 5. Today we're joined by Nuke. Nuke, how you doing today?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Awesome.
Um, and so today we're going to talk about something that you and I have actually talked about before, but just personally about masks and the kinds of masks that we wear and your experience with them. So just from our previous conversations, I know that you've definitely, worn a lot of masks in your past. And do you mind talking about some of the ones that you kind of fall back on a lot of times?
Yeah, man. So the book that comes to mind right away, no shocker, as per usual, is uh, the book by Lewis Howes, um, Masks of, oh my goodness, Masks of Vulnerability. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, I think I've forgotten the name right now. But essentially,
That's okay.
he's talking about the different masks of masculinity. There it is. He's talking about the different masks that men have, right? And
Okay.
the two in that book, like he names off like the sex mask, the Mr. Know-it-all, the stoic, the athlete, the joker, etc., etc. Yeah, and
Okay.
the two that really resonated with me were the joker mask and the athletic mask.
Okay.
And yeah, those are the masks that, growing up, specifically in junior high and high school, those were what defined Nuke. You know what I mean? That's how I got my laughs. That's how my self-image was created. That's how I made friends. That's how I got girls. Fill in the blank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was interesting once I read that book, now in my early 30s, late 20s, and it was saying how, those masks, quote unquote, it's not that they're bad. However, when we hide behind them out of fear, or or it's not conscious, or it's unhealthy, then there are problems, right? And
Okay.
to I was able to see that and see what it was I was hiding behind when it came to my athletic mask and or my joker mask.
Okay. And
Yeah.
can you expand on that a little bit more too? Because just the idea of having a mask doesn't necessarily mean that it's unhealthy.
Yeah. Okay, so for example, what I'll say is I'll use the Joker mask, okay? And so
Okay.
in the book, he says that the Joker mask is obviously that guy who always has a joke, always has to be funny, always is the life of the party, everybody comes to have a good time, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
However, most of the time, that same individual is not the guy you're going to come to when you have something serious to talk about. Ironically, you know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Is not going to be the guy that you think there's anything going wrong in his life. Yet, ironically, the reason why they have the mask is to hide the pain and the hurt they're going through.
Yes.
And so their mindset is, listen, if everybody else around me and externally is happy, having a good time, laughing, then no one will see the pain or the hurt or the confusion that I'm dealing with on the inside. And
Gotcha.
the example he uses is Robin Williams. And case in
Yeah.
point, like how he was Mr. Funny all the time, was making everybody laugh and what have you. Meanwhile, this guy commits suicide.
Yes.
And it just goes to show, like, man, like, this guy was struggling and he was hurting, but you never would have known that because he was so
Yep.
good at making sure that everybody else around him was laughing and having fun. So once again, when it's healthy, the Joker mask is beautiful. Everybody wants to be around him or her, has a great time, laughs, shits and giggles, high fives, butt taps. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when it's not healthy or it's not conscious, man, that individual's hurting and doesn't have a healthy outlet to communicate what they're going through, what they're feeling, and what have you.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And it's
Mm.
it's a really interesting thought. And so like in my mind, it's always been the struggle to try to differentiate between wearing say the Joker mask
Yep.
and then just naturally like being funny per
Yeah.
se.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the struggle has always been, when is it putting on an act and when is it meant to mask something and when is it actually, letting out who you are? And so that's one that I don't have an answer to. And so
Yeah.
it's one
And
that I've struggled with a lot.
and ditto, I'm in the same boat because and like the one that comes to mind always, yeah, is for me is that Joker mask of being like, hey, like, am I? You know what? What comes to mind right away when you ask that question is, am I trying to be funny versus am I just naturally in my element and just like am I adding to the environment and the conversation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to
Right?
me.
Because for me, it's like if you are trying to be funny, it's like man, like it's like you're forcing it and it's not naturally you, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
you know what, if you're part of the conversation and everybody just who are just having dialogue and conversation back and forth, and someone brings a topic up and you happen to have like a funny line or a funny story, then sweet, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, what comes to mind right away, dude, with stuff like that is, you know what, when you are being funny or hilarious, you're able to draw from your experiences. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you're
Yeah.
not poking fun at anybody or you're not insulting anybody in any way. You're just generally just talking about, hey man, this one time, dude. And because of that story and how you're able to relate and bring people into it, that becomes funny. So in that moment, you're not trying to be, you're just being yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it, like, for me, it comes back a lot too of that, should I, right?
Mm,
Like I should do that in this situation and
mm,
not just naturally doing it. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Of,
Yes.
you know, I am funny. And so I should make a joke right now, even though I don't really feel like it. I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then just kind of an interesting like caveat to what you were saying though, too, of, where you're not like making fun of anybody or doing it at their expense and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think for me, when that comes to mind, because my humor is very self-deprecating, but I also just love bugging people,
Yes.
right? And I call it bugging more than like making fun.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, stuff like that always comes back to intention, right?
Yep.
Like, are you bringing this up to put the other person down? Like, is it at their expense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or is it just the way that you show your love for them or your humor, or using humor to almost diffuse a situation or make something more easily digestible, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Of bringing up something that they maybe struggle with, or that sometimes even annoys you a little bit, but doing it in a humorous way and in a kind way, to make it easier to talk about. So
Yeah, for
for
sure.
that just popped up in my mind.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like at the end of the day, be funny, be jovial and joke around and poke fun. Just make sure that you're not like belittling someone or degrading someone or making
Yeah,
them feel shameful or et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean?
for sure. Yeah,
So
100%. And then so going back to kind of the masks that you identified as yourself having,
yeah.
do you know where they came from, and what kind of circumstances forced you into it?
Yeah, so my athletic mask was right for me. It was early on because one I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed when it came to academics.
Mm-hmm.
One because I didn't apply myself, and then two I didn't have enough self control to be disciplined enough, right? And so for me, it
Yeah.
was all about physical activity and movement and what have you. And so I learned really on that when I applied myself in sports or physical activity, I could concentrate, I could focus, and I was good. So naturally, my self image got wrapped up in, hey, um, if I'm playing a sport or doing something physical, I feel like Uniqua is valuable, and Uniqua is an active contributing member of this society. And then, as you get older, junior high and high school, you get respect, right? You're on the
Yeah.
school team, teachers, what is it? Your peers, your friends, your teammates, the females, they're attracted to that, right? And
Yep.
and again, it once again pumps up your ego, pumps up your self-image. And
Yep.
for me, like no one ever fully was like, "Oh my God, you're awesome, you're amazing." However, it was how I performed in those moments and the results that happened that re-solidified to me, hey, when you operate in this arena, right? You,
Yep.
Uniqua, are a value, you know. And when
Yes.
it came to like the
Yep.
Joker mask, it was, hey, like when people were laughing and having fun, it was like, yo, like once again, you had friends, people wanted to hang out with you. It was always like life of the party, let's have a good time, you know? And then once like and again, like I wouldn't say that I was hiding anything with my Joker mask. I just knew that's how I got attention. I could make people
Yep.
laugh. And in those moments, it was like, yo, like once again, especially in school, right? Like because I knew I wasn't academically killing it, it was like, okay, what's another way that I can be seen, I can be heard, I can be respected.
Yep.
So
Yep. No, that makes a ton of sense. And just just to kind of share on my end
yeah.
and like my experience, when you were talking earlier about the Joker mask, and a lot of times people use it, um, kind of to change their external because their internal is the opposite. It really clicked in my mind of that's a lot of times, what I was doing.
Yep.
And I didn't realize it until fairly recently, but I didn't realize how much just general like sadness I carried in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So same sort of thing that if I could make the people around me, laugh and happy, then I could kind of forget about that internal feeling for a little bit. And so I did gravitate towards that side of things.
Gold.
And yeah, and then another one, and I have not read the book,
All good. All
so
good.
this might not be one of the official masks that he talks about, but almost like a defense mechanism sort of mask that I also have very recently caught in myself and have really been trying to change it, of almost like a boastful kind of overconfident one.
Mm.
And when I say that, what I mean is essentially as a defense mechanism from one allowing people to get too close, but also to the want and need to be acknowledged for things,
Yep.
but at the same time, the fear of being seen, and as well as the feeling of not being deserving
Yep.
of accolades or praise or whatever it might be,
Mm-hmm.
would lead me to adopt a persona of like I said, being overconfident or boastful to the point that it would push people to kind of come back at me with, a lot of times more in like a joking manner, but I'd say something so outrageous that then they would go back and kind of put me down, so that inside I was like, yeah, I deserved that.
Mm.
And so it was this really interesting personality defense mechanism that I finally realized in myself, that I was that way because I wanted the attention but felt like I didn't deserve it. And so it would let people know, but it would also make sure that I didn't allow myself to feel too good about them.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's been one that I've slowly been trying to pull back more and more.
Yeah, and something that you said, which I really like, with our masks, it's ironic because we want to fit in and be part of the community. Because for whatever reason, we think if we just be ourselves, that's not good enough. So we put up a persona. And
Yes.
ironically, dude, we are basing it upon what we think other people want to see.
Yep.
You know, and it's just super interesting when you take a step back and you're like, wow, like that's actually kind of fucked when you think about
Yep.
it.
It was what comes to mind. It was something by Jay Shetty,
Mm,
um, and he was talking. He was like, "How we actually perceive ourselves is not what we think of ourselves, and is not what other people think of us. It's what we think other people perceive us to be
yeah,
like."
I remember reading something like that or seeing him talk about it,
Yeah,
and I was like, wait, what? Say that again? And you
yeah.
and you move the needle back so we can say it again, and you're like, yes,
The other thing that I find interesting is when you're talking to people and you have already assumed what you think they want or what is
mm-hmm.
the ideal or anything like that. And like,
Yep.
for instance, one that always comes to mind for me is when you talk to girls about like what they actually find attractive in a guy,
Mm.
right? And then it goes against what you thought it was. And it's like, no, no, no. I like it needs to be a six pack. Like, well, not really. And you're like, no, no, I don't believe you for a second. And then fighting against that because, in your mind, you've decided what other people want. And then you're trying to achieve that a lot of times instead of one, just being yourself, but two, actually maybe listening to other people about what they want.
For sure, for sure. I agree,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. And so my next question is, did you always kind of know that you were, maybe not having the vocabulary of wearing a mask, but almost putting on an act? Or do you think it was more subconscious when you were younger?
So I definitely knew I had to be a certain way around different people, right? So like obviously around mom and dad, you're not gonna say and do certain things, right? And
Yeah.
then around the boys, you're not gonna say and do certain things. Around the girls, you don't say and do certain, you know what I mean? So you almost have these multiple hats that you're wearing to like appease each group, each social group. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
was I aware of that? Yes, because there was the church nuke, there was home nuke, there was school nuke, there
Yeah.
was you know what I mean? There was multiple
Yeah.
nukes, right? And it wasn't till you get older and you start seeing through other people's example like wow, like you are shady and you're not consistent, and one minute you're like this, the next minute you're like that. And for me that was like okay, like I want to be the same person, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it got to a point in time, and I think it would have been like senior year, like going into first year culinary school, where it was like I wanted to be the type of person where it was like yo, like nuke, oh sweet, cool, da 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 da, right? It'd be the same thing, as opposed to being like, yo, Jared would be like, yo, Nuke, that dude's an asshole, and
Yeah.
then like let's just say Andy's like, yo, he's the tits and my best friend, and then you look at Andy and be like, you must be an idiot because Nuke is an asshole. What?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so for me, I wanted to be that. If anybody dropped my name, it would be like, yo, that guy's solid. So and it wouldn't matter whether or not it was I knew you for 5 minutes or I knew you for the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
It would be consistency, however that looked. And so for me, I really just took it on myself. Like, listen, I'm going to be the same guy as much as possible in every scenario.
Yeah.
Now within that, will it have, let's say, a different frequency or volume, or intensity?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. However, the grounding principles, those pillars will always be the same. It's
Yeah.
just how it shows up in different frequencies or potencies will depend on the environment and who I'm with and whether or not they can handle,
Yeah.
nuke on 100% volume, or they get nuke at 20% and we slowly increase the intensity throughout our progression or relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. And what came to mind for me is almost like turning up, like you were saying, the volume, right? Like turning the
Yep.
dials, but on different aspects of your personality, right? Like
Yeah.
in some situations you're going to have to be more serious, and some situations you can be a little bit more laid back. And for me, I don't know why this popped up in my mind, but when you're talking about that, it went back to something I would tell people when I was teaching them how to do sales. And
Yeah.
I would always say, make sure that you're actually staying true to your natural tendencies, right?
Hmm.
Because otherwise people are going to see through it.
Yeah,
Right?
man.
And so if you're naturally funny, then great. Yeah, be funny or be a little bit more laid back. But if you're not and you try to crack jokes all the time, like they're going to see through it. It's going to be awkward for everybody, right?
For
If you're
sure.
more serious, then be more serious, right? If
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
super outgoing, be outgoing. If you're more introverted, be more introverted, right? You will
Yep.
have to dial up certain aspects of your personality, but that's, like you said, dialing up the volume up or down, as opposed to trying to add something in that you don't naturally gravitate towards.
For sure. For sure. And also I think like part of the whole like mask conundrum is I don't think that we are taught how to be ourselves naturally and or how to navigate that effectively in our formative years, right?
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Because because I like to think, listen, like if we were taught from a young age like you are enough, like holistically, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like holistically again, through hard work, and through like emotional intelligence skills and people skills and communication skills, then there would be no reason for you when you meet a certain group of people to have a mask or to try and be something you're not from a young age, right?
Yep.
Versus you would generally just be. You'd be open, you'd be transparent, you'd be vulnerable and what have you. And we all are naturally like that. However, life happens and we
Yep.
don't have the right tools and protocols in place to navigate it through it properly. So what do? We all naturally clam up and we get a little bit more rigid. We become a little bit more harder and we don't expose the real side of ourselves, right?
Yep.
And now all of a sudden we are projecting what I think you want to see of me,
Yep.
which
Yep.
is which isn't serving me, which isn't serving you, and which isn't benefiting this dynamic whatsoever.
Yep. Yeah. And just when you're talking there too, I know that one thing that definitely makes it really tough for us when we are younger is just how small our sphere of influence is with the people that we're exposed to. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And like,
Mm-hmm.
for me thinking back on it and being like, okay, like elementary, you're basically stuck with whoever's in your class, like let alone
Yeah.
grade. But it's like
Yep.
you need to almost find somebody that you get along with in your class. And it's just so like it's so tough to naturally just be an individual if you don't have anybody like that. As you get older and you're able to go outside and outside your school and your classroom and find like-minded people,
Yeah.
if when you're able to do that, it makes it easier. But when you just are, exposed to maybe 30 other people, and if you don't find somebody that kind of matches you, how hard it is just to go be okay with that and be by yourself. And definitely takes a lot of, mental strength at a very, very young age. So,
And you know what, Jared? Like you're absolutely right, and I agree with you. And what I want to add to that is, however, the way not even however, like to me, the question is always like, where then do we teach these kind of fundamental skills to kids then, right? Because listen, in my mind, I'd rather at least a seed be planted in grade 1, 2, 3. And guess what? Even if maybe you're not using it word for word right now, right?
yeah,
When life happens and now you're pushing 4, 5, 6, entering junior high, going into, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Those things that were talked about back then, you'd be like, oh, and guess what? It's been festering and growing and building this whole time in your subconscious. So now when life actually happens and you actually now have to use it, you're like, oh, that's what they meant by this, as opposed to
Yeah.
it never being talked to you or addressed. And now you're 17 with the Joker mask and athletic mask, not knowing how to be your true authentic self, because as far as you're concerned, that's all you know. And no one's ever
Yeah.
told you otherwise, or giving you the tools or resources to navigate, hey, I don't need to hide behind this Joker mask or athletic mask, all in an effort to protect the real Nuke. Because that's the thing. When it's not conscious or healthy, it's all fear based.
Yep.
It's because I don't want Jared to even catch a glimpse of the real Nuke for fear he may not like the real Nuke. Because guess what? Maybe real Nuke isn't actually funny and isn't at all athletic. Then what?
Yep.
Our friendship goes right out the window.
Yep. And I really like that you pushed me on that, because I 100% agree. And I don't think that it was coming off. I don't think that it was coming off like the way that I wanted it to. And
Yeah.
almost that, like, at the very least, having it in the back of your mind of, okay, well, like right now there's, I don't even know how I want to put it, but, just knowing that being yourself is enough by
Yes.
just being yourself.
Yes.
And maybe right now I'm not able to be 100% myself, but one day I will be able to, and there will be people that I get along with and am friends with and love me because of it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And so kind of the next couple questions change a little bit if we're thinking that sometimes masks can be healthy, because my next one was, like how do you start removing the mask, or at least the unhealthy mask that you might have on yourself?
Yeah, dude, and Jared, I can tell you right now, man, like that mask never goes away, right?
Yeah.
It's always there. It's just you get better at navigating it, right? So I can
Yeah.
tell you, case in point, like obviously, if I'm meeting people for the first time and sports are involved, I'm gonna try and show my athletic prowess there in that arena. However, throughout that experience, other components of Nuke will come to the surface, and you'll see the compassionate, caring facilitator. You know what I mean? Like wants everybody to
Yeah.
have fun. It's not all about winning. It's not all about me. I don't have to be the strongest or the fastest. Like, let's have fun. You see what I'm saying? And so,
Yep.
so in those moments, hey, can it be there at the beginning? Yes. And then eventually, guess what? It comes off, right? And
Yep.
or you are using it, right? And it's healthy and it's conscious and you're aware, and fine. Again, as long as it's not coming out of fear, or you're not aware of it, those to me are the two biggest indicators.
Yeah, for sure. And like you kind of said, I think that the biggest one is just consciously knowing it's there.
Yeah, 100%.
And something else that we talked about in the previous episode, of just knowing that lens is there.
Yes.
That you're gonna react to certain situations in a certain way, because that's just your past experiences, and that's the way that you're going to see it. And it might not be, if you don't realize how your past experiences are shaping what you're doing and saying, then that's when you're in trouble. But at least if you can consciously identify them, then you can challenge them. Like, is this hiding something? Is this hiding an insecurity?
Exactly.
Is this hiding a feeling?
Exactly.
Or is this actually how I feel?
100%, dude. Well said. And I love that caveat, because what I was going to add to what you're saying, Jared, is like it gets to a point in time where it needs to be, is this serving me? Is this serving me and moving me forward? Right? So basically,
Yeah.
part two of your question is, well, then how do we hypothetically get rid of a mask? Listen, if you have an athletic mask, don't put yourself then in athletic pursuits or endeavors then. Do you see what I'm saying? So then naturally, you don't go to that mask. Is it going to be hard? Yes. Is it going to be outside your comfort zone? Yes. However, if that's something that you know isn't serving you anymore, and you know that there's a wound that needs to be healed, then get around the opposite of that,
Yeah.
right? So it forces you to now cultivate and nourish and transform that wound or that mask that you had to cover up the wound with.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the other questions, and the one that I joked with you earlier reminded me of that gift that you sent me was, how do you know that you're actually taking off a mask and not just switching it out for another one, right? And when I asked that, and when you were talking, what I was thinking about is, again, if you're conscious about what that mask is trying to cover up, a lot of times you can switch the activity. And, like when you're talking, like if you say you have an athletic mask, but really what it's trying to hide is, showing people your worth, and doing that by exceeding at athletics. Yep. If you go and switch it to, say, theater, if it's serving the exact same purpose, then it's another unhealthy mask. Yep. If you're doing it to succeed, to show your worth, again, you've switched it out. You've switched an unhealthy mask for another unhealthy mask, instead of realizing what it was covering up in the first place, and addressing that.
Preach.
Yep.
I don't have anything to add to that, dude.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was so good.
Cool. Well, that was my last point, actually, too. And so, anything else you want to say on it? Anything we didn't get to? Anything like that?
I don't think so. I think you had some great questions, and we came to a really good mindset and attitude. It's not so much about the mask. However, what is the mask hiding, right? And is there willingness to deal with, that pain, that trauma, that hurt, whatever it may be, and then moving forward to be conscious and make healthy choices moving forward, and to then not replace it with another mask, thinking that you've healed that wound. So yes, the activity has changed. However, the root problem is still the same and hasn't been solved.
Yeah.
So yeah, man.
Yep. Amazing. Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, cool. Just making sure.
Amazing. Well, as always, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure having you, and I'm looking forward to next time.
Cheers, sir. Thank you. And I always have fun talking with you, man. Thank you.
Always. Take care now.